Hey, everybody, this is Joe Joseph, and this is the DailySheeple.com's Daily News Brief. Let's start out tonight by going across the Atlantic Ocean over to Davos, however you want to say it, and the resort that they typically hold one of their elitist meetings every year. New York Times saying Davos elite fret over inequality over vintage wine and crepes. I mean, come on, of course. It says you have perhaps noticed that in many countries, history-altering numbers of people have grown enraged at the economic elite and their tendency to hog the spoils of globalization. This wave of anger has delivered Donald J. Trump to the White House, sent Britain towards the exit of the European Union, and threatened the future of global trade. The people gathered here this week in the Swiss Alps for the annual World Economic Forum have noticed this too. They're elite. Head of the state, billionaire hedge fund managers, and technology executives. And they're all eager to talk about how to set things straight, set things right, soothe the populist fury by making globalization a more lucrative proposition for the masses. Of course. So what they're going to do, folks, is they're going to throw you crumbs. And everybody out there, see, this is the whole point of globalization was, does it give you cheap Chinese goods? Does it give you the ability to have a flat screen in every room of your house? Absolutely. Globalization does do things that promote better prices, if you will, comparatively speaking to, say, how things were in the 70s and 80s and, prior to globalization, and the fact that, a rotary dial telephone back in 1983 cost $20. You go today to get a telephone, just a regular old telephone, if you want one that just plugs into the wall, you can get one for $5 at Walmart. Globalization. You don't have American labor making the goods. You're not paying for retirements and pensions and everything else. And so what do you get? You get cheap stuff. If you don't want cheap stuff, or if you want to restrict global trade, which, this is the game you play when you start playing the economic warfare, then you typically have to do things, locally, or in this case, nationally. And that's going to come at a cost. So people that are against globalization have to be ready to live within the means of this country. That's going to mean higher cost, huge cost of living increase. You won't be able to have all the cheap Chinese trinkets that you used to be able to get. There won't be a flat screen in every room. It goes back to the way things were in the 1980s. You had a toaster oven. That was a real big expense. You got a microwave? Ooh. Or anybody that had over a 19-inch television. Man, that was crazy because it just cost too much. And we have to get away from that Bernaysian, sate your desires type of mentality and go back to a much more needs-based idealism and a lot more selfless. I mean, everybody's so damn self-centered. That's, when you talk about one of the root causes of the problem. Think about it. All Bernays did was tap into people's selfishness and their desires. And once he got into that, once he was able to tap into that, it opened the floodgates. And now the problem is American labor just doesn't exist. We've gone from a producing country to a consuming country. We've gone from being a manufacturing nation to a service-based nation. We provide services. Jobs are drying up. The well-paying jobs are drying up. I know that you see President Trump touting more jobs coming back to the United States. I wonder what they're going to pay. It's one thing to spew numbers. This company's coming back is going to be 1,000 jobs. Okay. What kind of jobs are they? Under President Obama, the jobs that were produced were all low-paying jobs. The majority of them. And so does that really benefit the economy? When people are making, You got electricians making $14 an hour. Are you kidding me? Electronic technicians making $16, $18 an hour with 6 years experience. I mean, that's ridiculous. You can't raise a family. It's funny when you adjust for inflation, salaries, let's just say 1955, Back to the Future, right? If you're a cashier at the grocery store in 1955, and you are a Walmart cashier today, your typical Walmart cashier averages about $8.80 an hour. If you adjust the salary for inflation, 1955, the cashier at the grocery store, he makes the equivalent of $38 an hour today, he or she. And at that, if you're pulling down $38 an hour, you're making pretty good money. And consequently, quality of life is improved, family units stay intact, and everybody is a lot happier. But because the Federal Reserve and because our government and because the powers that shouldn't be and oligarchs have gone and executed the largest transfer of wealth in the history of humankind and have hamstrung our ability to be able to make a fair and livable wage. Because it used to be the thing was, hey, you go to college. That's right, Johnny. Go to college, get your 4-year degree, and you'll be fine. Woo! Or whatever, It's not that way anymore. You've got engineers coming out of college making $45,000 a year and saddling themselves with thousands upon thousands of dollars in debt. I'm a victim of the student loan stuff. I'll be paying them off for the rest of my life. It's crazy. And what's very interesting about this whole thing is that because the U.S. government has made it so easy to get financing for college, you have kids that drink the Kool-Aid and think that it's okay because when they get out, they're going to get a job. They're going to be good. Everything's going to be okay. And it's not. It's not. Whereas now, tradesmen are in such high demand. Mechanics, carpenters, people with their AC&R licenses, they're in such demand now that some companies out there are actually going into the trade schools, and I'm talking high school, and basically giving them letters of intent saying that we will pay you 60, 80 grand a year if you just graduate. If you can get through school and graduate, we'll hire you and we'll pay you this much. That's what they're doing now. Why? Because so many people have drank the Kool-Aid and gotten that useless piece of paper after 4 years of saddling yourself in unimaginable debt that the market is saturated with people, but not tradesmen. So my advice to any of you parents out there, where your kids are concerned, I cannot stress this enough. Trades. That's where the money is, where the jobs are at. Not to mention the fact tradesmen typically have a more entrepreneurial spirit, and because you kind of have to, and they're better survivors. So just food for thought as the elite go ahead and fret over the populist movement going on all over the world. And they don't have any real solutions to this, by the way, folks, because they don't want to give this stuff up. They don't want to give it up. They just want to keep sucking the well dry. I don't know how the hell they can keep sucking. There's nothing left. SHTFplan.com. Molotov cocktail in chief. The Trump years are going to be crazier than you think. See, this is what I've been thinking for quite some time. Really. Because it's too good to be true. Just ask yourself, Is it too good to be true to have somebody that actually has your best interest at heart in the Oval Office doing the things that he's supposed to do, how he's supposed to do it, by the law, by the Constitution? Of course it is. In this day and age, absolutely. And how many times have we been promised things only to be disappointed? So, me being the pessimist in this situation, I happen to agree with that. It says, think you know what the Trump years will bring. Probably none of us can guess what's really going to happen. Love or hate Trump, the chances are pretty good that the next 4 years will be some of the most chaotic that the United States has ever seen. The resetting of the economic landscape and further deterioration of the social fabric will weigh heavily over American affairs while the country watches the spectacle of a president who could insult his way to the top and possibly outweigh the intelligence and establishment groups in power behind the throne. Riots and other form of violence, economic breakdown, and great wins and losses during the reversal and change in direction of fiscal policy will throw a monkey wrench into everything and throw gas on the fire. Those who brought Trump to the forefront of American politics thought throwing Trump was a Molotov cocktail, and chances are they're probably right. You see, the wild cards are everywhere because you got Trump, you got Putin, you got the Fed, you got the CIA, you got Israel, and you got the fate of the Middle East. And nothing, of course, will be predictable. And the true course of events may only be evident in hindsight. Very much like, prophecy's concerned. You really don't understand it happens until after it happens. And with Trump, there are those who are trying to catch a spark. Is that revolution? Is that civil war or perhaps unrest around the corner? I don't know. But I will tell you this. I won't play it for you tonight. However, in this SHTF article, there's a link to the latest video by a gentleman that I have great respect for, and that's Storm Clouds Gathering is the channel on YouTube. And he does fantastic analysis of critical subject matter that means a lot to you and your family. So check out that video. And speaking of Putin, apparently Russia snaps, according to Zero Hedge. And, well, they came out throwing punches at the UK, Germany, and France. And what did Russia accuse UK and Germany and France of doing? Why? Grossly interfering in the U.S. election. Isn't this interesting? Wow. So now Russia coming out on the offensive, saying, having listened stoically for the past 2 months to accusations with evidence that Moscow hacked the U.S. election and the Hillary loss was indirectly due to Putin's alleged meddling. That crazy Putin. Yes, he is. He's a crazy guy. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov finally snapped and lashed out at the ongoing U.S. election scapegoat fiasco, saying that leaders and top officials from the UK, Germany, and France grossly interfered in U.S. internal affairs, campaigned for Hillary Clinton, and openly demonized Donald Trump. Unlike U.S. accusations of Russia interference, at least Lavrov's claim can be substantiated with a simple Google search of news events in mid to late 2016. Speaking during a press conference following a meeting with his Austrian counterpart, Sebastian Kurz, Lavrov said he was angry about what's been happening with Moscow, and he's tired of the accusations that it meddled in U.S. elections. In fact, Lavrov said, it's time to acknowledge the fact that it was the other way around. He says, quote, U.S. allies have grossly interfered in American internal affairs and in this election campaign. As a matter of fact, he was quoted as saying this: we noticed that Angela Merkel, Francois Hollande, Theresa May, and other Europeans did so. He added that official representatives of some of the European countries did not mince words and essentially demonized Donald Trump during the election. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And Zero Hedge in this capacity is absolutely right. You can do a Google search and see the gross interference. You don't need to have a clandestine operation come and tell you that and then not show you any of the evidence. We've yet to see in any way how Russia interfered in the election, how Russia had provided WikiLeaks anything. No one's presented any evidence. It's just all yip, 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 because it's the government. And we're supposed to blindly trust the government, like we blindly trust the government to maintain our Social Security fund, and how we blindly trust the government to ensure that our rights are protected, because they have our best interest at heart, folks. If there's one thing I'm glad to hear Donald Trump talk about, it is slashing civil servants across the board. I hope and pray that we see a drastic reduction in the size of government, because there are resources, these precious resources that we pay for are being horribly wasted. An unconstitutional organizations within the government, in waste, fraud, and abuse, in just having an enormous amount of people to do the task that probably 25% could actually get done, minus the military, of course. I mean, if you're nation building and empire building, well, then I guess you need more than that. But certainly we could allocate those resources, or just, how about this? How about just give them back? How about just give it back to the people? Let them spend their own money. How about that? Wouldn't that just be delightful? And, you know, in prepping for the news brief tonight, I was reminded of an article that I saw years ago, and I wanted to read this for you real quick. And this is Washington's blog. And this blog post comes from 2011, so it's about 5 years old, a little over 5 years old. And it says, basically the article says, how prevent tyranny by educating people. And it's basically called Everything Happening Now Was Planned Before 9/11. And I want you to listen to this because this is very important, and it even applies today. It's a special, it says, we've been told that 9/11 changed everything, and that we're living in a post-9/11 world. We've been told that what our government is doing now has been rendered necessary by the urgent post-9/11 threat from terrorists. In reality, however, virtually everything happening now was planned before 9/11. The government spying on Americans began before 9/11. The Patriot Act was planned before 9/11. Indeed, former counterterrorism czar Richard Clarke told Stanford law professor Lawrence Lessig this. After 9/11, the government drew up the Patriot Act within 20 days and it was passed. The Patriot Act is huge, and I remember someone asking a Justice Department official, how did they write such a large statute so quickly? And of course, the answer was that it had been sitting in the drawers of the Justice Department for the last 20 years, just waiting for the event where they would pull it out. Governments plan, exercise, and drill to detain American citizens who opposed war were also drawn up before 9/11, as was a bill allowing the permanent detention by the Attorney General of aliens convicted of no crimes with no judicial review. The Afghan War was planned before 9/11. The decision to launch the Iraq War was made before 9/11. Indeed, former CIA Director George Tenet said that the White House wanted to invade Iraq long before 9/11 and inserted crap in its justification for invading Iraq. Former Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill, who sat on the National Security Council, also said that Bush planned the Iraq War before 9/11. Top officials, British officials said that the U.S. discussed Iraqi regime change even before Bush took office. And in 2000, Cheney said a Bush administration might, quote, have to take military action to forcibly remove Saddam from power. Cheney made Iraqi's oil fields a national security priority before 9/11. And the Sunday Herald reported, quote, 5 months before September 11th, the U.S. advocated using force against Iraq to secure control of its oil. The decision to threaten to bomb Iran was made before 9/11. And the Christian Science Monitor noted that the U.S. has been claiming for more than 30 years that Iran was on the verge of nuclear capability. War throughout the Middle East and North Africa to effect regime change was made before 9/11. And Cheney dreamed of giving the White House the power of monarchy long before 9/11. Cheney and Rumsfeld actively generated fake intelligence, which exaggerated the threat from an enemy in order to justify huge amounts of military spending. Long before 9/11, the government knew that terrorists could use planes as weapons and had even run its own drills and play of planes being used as weapons against none other than the World Trade Center and other U.S. high-profile buildings using real planes all before 9/11. And of course, finally, America played dirty games to justify wars before 9/11. Folks, it's been going on for quite some time. And until we change the dynamic, until we break out of the cycle, we have to break free. Nothing's going to change. So get out there and educate the peeps. I'm Joe Joseph. This was the DailySheeple.com's Daily News Brief, and I'll have one again for you tomorrow. Ta-ta for now.